None of this is in a 9/11 Commission report. None of it. Who didn't do his job with 9/11 runs around saying it's outrageous that a senator would want to reopen 9/11. You wait till it's over, Chuck Schumer. You'll be the biggest fool in America for the cover-up that you helped make occur as a Democrat. Even Donald Trump, there's a recording of him that I have a copy of, and you can get a copy of it, on 9/11. He's interviewed by a TV station in New York as they talk about Building 7. And he said, oh, as a builder, I can tell you that building wasn't exploded. That building, that was controlled demolition. Where was NIST when the leaders of our country were working in buildings that were fire traps? They were nowhere around. NIST felt the pressure to come up with a report that was a part of the game plan that Clinton, Bush, White Houses wanted to say that 9/11 was not what it was. But when Donald Trump took on the 51 and took away their security clearances, I said, that's my signal. It's time to talk. And so I said in January, I'm going public. If they kill me, I hope 100,000 firefighters surround CIA headquarters.
Yeah, that did look like there was an explosion as it went down.
It went up.
We just witnessed some kind of secondary follow-up explosion on the World Trade Center #2, the one that is on the south that is difficult to make out through the debris and smoke. The second tower, the only one that was standing, tower #1, just we saw some kind of explosion, a lot of smoke come out of the top of the tower, and then it collapsed down onto the streets below.
There has just been a huge explosion. We can see a billowing smoke rising.
Today, I'm joined by former Congressman Curt Weldon to go through a topic I'm very curious about, 9/11. Were we told the truth? Is it time for a new commission? I want to go through all of this and much more. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me today.
Happy to be with you, Steve. Thank you for your service to the country.
So I saw you on the Jimmy Dore show. I saw you on Tucker Carlson. I just want to applaud your bravery in what you were trying to do to not only get the truth out about 9/11, but also to stand up for the firefighters that lost their lives. Very noble what you're doing. Congressman, every single friend of mine, every family member of mine believes we are not being told the truth about 9/11. I was 19 years old when it happened. I was on a Christian service mission. I was in the Dominican Republic. It was raining. I was teaching people about Jesus. And then someone approached me and said, American, you need to get out of here. Your country's being attacked. I got back to my building just in time for the second airplane to hit. Do you believe that we are being told the truth in the 9/11 Commission report? Or are they leaving key details out, or is it both?
No, it was a cover-up. No one spent more time focused on the run-up to 9/11 than I did. As a former firefighter and a fire chief, when I went to Congress in 1987, I organized all the firefighters in America. The Congressional Fire Caucus that I built, which is now 37 years old, remains the largest in the Congress. And my job was to represent all the interests of the firefighters in the 53,000 departments across the country, 53,000 stations managed by 33,000 departments, and 85% of them are volunteers. And so I would go to all the disasters when they occurred as a member of Congress to learn, not as a press opportunity, but to talk to the firefighters, listen to what they were saying. So I was at the Wahalian fires, the Midwestern floods, the Murrah building bombing, Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Hugo. And I went to the World Trade Center in 93, both as a member of Congress and as a former firefighter, fire chief. I spent the day at Ground Zero, hosted by Fire Commissioner Howard Safer and by the Fire Department of New York. And they had me go through the bombed out parking garage with ATF and the FBI and the New York Fire Department. And then I met and worked with one of the rising stars in the fire department, whose name was Ray Downey. Ray was a former Marine, 5 kids, and he was rising up in the ranks of the rescue operation for the city. So I got to know Ray, and Ray said, told me what happened, and he said, this is going to happen again. We need to be prepared, and we're not prepared now. He told me what the shortcomings were. So I took notes, went back to the Capitol that evening, and went right to the House floor and did a 1-hour special order. It was probably 10 o'clock at night. And the special order was focused on what I saw at the World Trade Center and my experience in going through the World Trade Center tower. And I mentioned Ray Downey, and people can actually get a copy of the special order. It's obviously still available. And when I got back to my office, I got a call at 11 o'clock at night. I answered the phone, and I thought somebody was pulling my leg. The guy said, this is Mario Cuomo. And I said, oh, yeah, and I'm howdy doody. He said, no, this is Mario Cuomo. He said, I'm the governor of New York. I'm sitting in my office in Albany, and I have C-SPAN on, and I just watched your speech that you gave about your day in New York and your commitment to our fire department, our firefighters, and our city as you went through this terrible tragedy. And I said, Governor, I said, my commitment is to the firefighters of your city and to the country, and I don't want this to happen again. So you have my pledge that I will work with your people and with Ray Downey and Howard Safer to try to make sure that we're prepared. That was the beginning of my support. And it just so happened that at the time I was rising up through the ranks in the Congress of the Armed Services Committee. Ultimately, in the 90s, I became the vice chairman of the oversight of all military research. That's over $150 billion a year. So I was vice chairman of the full committee, and I was the chairman of the subcommittee overseeing all research from all of our labs, both the intelligence research needed for the CIA and our defense intelligence and for the regular forces. So in that capacity, I was able to shape where we were spending money on the next generation of technology. And so while working on coming up with ideas to deal with terrorist attacks, I was also the oversight chairman of over $150 billion a year of tax money focused on dealing with problems involving the use of technology. I introduced legislation that the Gilmore Commission doesn't even focus on. The legislation created the Gilmore Commission. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Created the Gilmore Commission, and it was called the Gilmore Commission because Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore, an outstanding man of integrity, was selected as chair of that commission. That commission was created by the Congress to focus on the '93 attack. And that commission, Ray Downey was a member of, along with 8 or 9 other members of the commission. They issued 5 reports before 9/11 of things that we should be doing to prevent and deal with another attack before 9/11 happened. Now, I wrote that legislation. I testified before that commission. The country didn't pay much attention to the Gilmore Commission. I certainly did. And one of those key recommendations in that commission was that we did not have a fusion of our raw intelligence. The agencies weren't talking to each other. The CIA wasn't talking to the FBI, DIA wasn't talking to the NSA. We have 33 classified systems in the federal government that we pay for taxpayer money, 33, and they weren't connected. And so that became a concern of mine, and that became one of the recommendations that I suggested to Ray that he include in the Gilmore Commission recommendations. In fact, at the time I learned, because of my position on the Armed Services Committee, that the services were standing up what are called information dominance centers. Each of the services, the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, all had centers that they were standing up to deal with the threat of cyber terrorism. This was in the 90s, when this was just becoming a new threat. I was overseeing the funding, so I was heavily involved in what they were doing. The Army's Information Dominance Center was located at Fort Belvoir, which is 20 minutes from where I was working in the Capitol. And it was located at the Land Information Warfare Assessment Center, the LIWA. And I would go down there periodically to look at what these Army professionals were doing to see, what this was and to understand how could this help us deal with terrorism, especially related to what I saw at the '93 attack. I did not get right into the program. I could have as a member of Congress and vice chairman of the Defense Committee, but I didn't need to. But I knew what they were doing was cutting edge. They were using software like Starlight and Spires and other technologies that other people did not have. And I was impressed. And so I suggested to the Deputy Secretary of Defense under Clinton, John Hamre, a good man. I said, John, you have to go down to the Army and see what they're doing at Fort Belvoir because it's amazing. So John Hamre went down to Fort Belvoir at my suggestion, and he met with the team of analysts there. There were eventually, I found out there were about 20 or 25 of them, and he was briefed. And he called me. He said, Congressman Weldon, Chairman, you're right. This is amazing. We need this capability for not just the Pentagon, but for our country. So I said, well, John, I'll pay for it. I'm the vice chairman of the committee. That's not going to be a problem. And he said, well, you've got to convince the FBI and the CIA to let us use their raw data because they're the two largest intelligence agency systems in the country. If you get them behind it, it'll succeed. On November the 4th of 1999, that day will never leave my head. In my office, I had John Hamre, at his suggestion, I had the deputy director of the FBI, the deputy director of the CIA, and I handed them a proposal. I didn't create the proposal. The proposal was created for me by intelligence professionals that I worked with to create what we called the NOAA, N-O-A-H, National Operations and Analysis Hub, policymaker and warfighters tool to deal with emerging transnational terrorist threats. It was part of what we got as the way of recommendation from Ray Downey from the 93 attack. I handed it to the three people. Hamre said, it's great, we need it. I'll manage it either at the White House or in the Pentagon. I said, I'll fund it. The FBI said, we support it. And the CIA said, we don't want it. We're not going to participate. We're doing something called CI-21. Now, why they turned that down is a big question that's never been answered. Was it because of just their selfishness and thinking they knew it all? Or was it because they didn't want other agencies to understand the raw data that they were getting that might give an insight into what they were involved with that they don't want the rest of the country to know about? No one knows the answer to that question. And that's got to be done by a presidential commission. The 9/11 Commission whitewashed this whole thing. So as a result of that, I was very frustrated. I put language in two successive defense bills. In the 2000 and 2001 defense bills, I put legislative language suggesting that we have the need for a fusion center. So I was pushing this continually. I did speeches all over the Capitol area and all over the country at intelligence forums, calling for a fusion center between 99 and 9/11. And I pushed as hard as I could. When the Clinton administration didn't respond, the Bush administration came in 2001. I met with the Bush people, and I told them, you've got to do this. Clinton didn't do it, but you've got to do it. My party. They didn't do it. So this is both parties. On 9/11, I got frantic calls. I was in the Rayburn building in my office. I had been doing a press conference in the Capitol with two Democrat members, Solomon Ortiz and Silva Reyes, calling for more money to deal with terrorists around the country. And the planes hit the towers. In my office, my staff was running crazy. They were evacuating all the office buildings. And I get 4 calls on my cell phone, all frantic. Those 4 calls were from the team that was working at the Army's Information Dominance Center. It was then that I learned what the name of their program was, Able Danger. It was then that I learned what they were doing, as each of them came in to brief me separately. Tony Schaefer, Lieutenant Colonel in the Army, career intelligence spy. Scott Philpott, Annapolis grad, brilliant analyst, went on to command 2 of our warships. Dr. Eileen Pricer, career Air Force intelligence officer, brilliant scientist when it came to link analysis and understanding software systems. And the leader of the group, who was an outstanding individual, still is an outstanding individual, who convinced me that I should be supporting this effort during the entire time that it was being put together. And those 4 people came to me and begged me, not together. They were all separate. They said, Mr. Chairman, you don't understand what's been happening. I said, look, we're in the middle of a war. They're attacking us. They've hit the New York World Trade Center. There's a plane that we think's headed for the Capitol. They've evacuated all the office buildings and the Capitol itself. What's so important? We have to show you. And by the way, the 4th person was Eric Kleinsmith. He was the leader of the effort. So I met with them individually, and they rolled out the charts. They showed me charts that showed every Al-Qaeda cell in the world by face and by name. Every chart, every cell by face and by name. They showed me the charts that included Osama bin Laden in the center, linked to him. They showed me the 5 key cells that were located in cities around the world where we had major terrorist attacks, like the Khobar Towers bombing. And one of those cells was New York City. And they each told me the story. Able Danger was created by General Hugh Shelton, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It was managed by Special Forces Command, General Schumacher, both great leaders. They had a secondary facility down in Garland, Texas. They told me that their mission was very top secret and that they were designed to bring information from various sources of intelligence capabilities of the federal government to get a picture of terrorist activity. They told me that that program, which General Shelton started, had identified the New York cell, and 3 times they tried to transfer that information to our Justice Department. 3 times before 9/11. We have the name of the person in the Justice Department. We know the woman, and she will come forward. We know the names of the Able Danger team members. They're now all coming forward. We know the name of the Inspector General, Acting Inspector General for DOD, who was ordered to lie to the Congress, and he requested whistleblower status. I have his whistleblower affidavit that he filled out. None of this is in a 9/11 Commission report. None of it.
Every time you go online, you're at risk. Hackers, trackers, and data thieves can steal your personal info, passwords, even your identity. A VPN or virtual private network like ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, hides your data, and keeps you safe. Last year, on my anniversary in Mexico, we couldn't watch our favorite shows on Hulu, Netflix, or Disney Plus due to regional locks until we switched our ExpressVPN on. It lets you change your virtual location to unlock shows worldwide while keeping you safe. ExpressVPN invests in premium servers so it's consistently faster than other VPNs. It has 24/7 customer support, allows up to 8 devices to be protected, and has something called ExpressVPN keys, which remembers your password and credit card information to make life online easy and safe. Plus, in the US, they have the ability to help you remove your personal information from online data brokers. Go check it out today. Get 4 months free. Scan the QR code, click the link below, or visit expressvpn.com/Gardner25. Protect yourself today with ExpressVPN.
The 9/11 Commission report was put together because neither Clinton nor Bush wanted a report of what happened. They didn't want the blame. In a democracy, you need to understand what happened so you can learn, especially when 3,000 people are killed. They didn't want the facts. So they put a guy named Zelikow in charge. No one knew who he was. He was Condoleezza Rice's close friend and remains that today. Evidently, did business with her. I don't know. That's what's been reported. And they put Jamie Gorelick on the commission, who was a Clinton appointee, who had written a firewall memo when she was an attorney for the Clinton administration in 1996 or 97 that said you could not transfer military intelligence to civilian law enforcement. Those two people ran the commission, along with a staffer named Dieter Snell. I have members of the commission who came to me and told me they weren't getting all the information. We had one senator who backed away from the commission, Max Cleland from Georgia. We had other members of the commission who I will remain nameless right now until the right time, who knew they weren't being told the full story of what occurred. The 9/11 Commission was a spin machine. It was designed to create a spin story to make the American people think this thick document really had comprehensively looked at every aspect of 9/11. What we knew beforehand, who did it, what happened to the buildings, and what happened to bin Laden afterwards. None of that's in the 9/11 Commission report. I kept quiet for 18 years. And why? Because in 2006, I was going to become the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. I was next in line. In 2000, Donald Rumsfeld wrote a one-page letter, which I have, endorsing me to be chairman of the Armed Services Committee in 2000. That same year, Bill Clinton's Deputy Secretary of Defense, John Hamre, wrote a one-page letter endorsing me to be chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Both Republican and Democrat leaders, along with 180 other leaders, members of Congress, leaders of intelligence, military leaders, wrote letters asking me in 2000 to become chairman, but we had a system at that time of seniority. I would have had to jump over 5 members ahead of me in tenure, and I didn't do that, but I have those letters. When I challenged the 9/11 attack and the information, then that all changed. Neither administration wanted the truth. Neither of them wanted me to do my job. My job on behalf of the American people wasn't to spin the story so that Bill Clinton or George Bush Jr. had clean hands when it came time to understand why 3,000 people lost their lives. And in my case, 343 firefighters, including my friend Ray Alford. And so I kept quiet because they raided my daughter's house 3 weeks before my election. 3 weeks before my election. No one from any agency ever talked to my daughter. No one. This is long before Donald Trump. In 2006, Robert Mueller, and according to Seymour Hersh, at the request of Brennan and Clapper, wanted my election disrupted. So Mueller sent, and I know the person that sent them, and I know every detail about this now, sent agents from Philadelphia to my daughter's office, my daughter's house at 7 in the morning, with the TV cameras from the entire country taking pictures of them carrying boxes out of her house. That was the big scandal nationwide. Vice Chairman of Defense and Homeland Security Committee must be corrupt. No one ever talked to my daughter or me. In fact, 3 months later, and I sent this to you today, George Bush the father did a tribute to me, and I hope you play it for your viewers. That tribute was done before 2,000 leaders at our national dinner in Washington. And that tribute by George Bush Sr., who had also been the CIA director, said, Congressman Weldon, you are the kind of leader that America needs, who left the country stronger and better. That was 3 months after the scumbags around his son ruined my daughter's life and led to other disruptions in my family, including the eventual death of my son. That's not the way America operates. I kept quiet because I could not trust the deep state scum. And I have many friends in intelligence, many friends that are good people, and I respect them. But when Donald Trump took on the 51 and took away their security clearances, I said, that's my signal. It's time to talk. And so I said in January, I'm going public. If they kill me, I hope 100,000 firefighters surround CIA headquarters in the Capitol building. I hope 300 fire trucks come out around CIA headquarters the same way I surrounded the Capitol building when I couldn't get interoperable communication. So I had 300 fire trucks circle the Capitol. It's in my book. You'll see the pictures. We put ladders up next to the Capitol. We got that system. It's called FirstNet today. This country needs to hold people accountable. The largest and most outrageous disaster in the history of mankind was on our soil. And the people who did it and the people who covered it up have got to be held accountable.
Okay, that's why I want to get your story up. As I went back through the 9/11 stuff, a few things just keep standing out to me that make no sense. You have large groups of architects willing to put their career, their income, their lives on the line, saying this building could not have been brought down the way that it did. You've got videos now surfacing of police officers, firefighters, witnesses saying, we heard explosions, we heard bombs. None of it makes sense. And yet within the commission's own report, it claims that a jet fuel firebomb after the airplane hit went down 208 feet in an elevator shaft, melting all of the metal, weakening the structure, and that's what brought the buildings down. Do you buy that for a minute?
Well, excuse my language, but that's pure bullshit. I'm a firefighter. I was a fire chief, a deputy fire chief on the largest fire in America 50 years ago, the collision of 2 tankers in my hometown. I wrote a book about it, and I testified before Congress, the House Energy Committee, as a 20-something-year-old fire chief on maritime fire safety. 28 people were killed in that disaster. For 18 years, I worked for the largest insurance company in North America, the INA. My job was to train their technical people that inspected buildings that we insured. High-rise buildings, complex buildings. Now, I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, but I know something about building fires. I know a lot about what happened there because I was at ground zero the day after the attack occurred. And I had been through the buildings with Ray Downey when the 93 attack occurred. The biggest story, and you're right, 3,000 architects and engineers who all have careers, have risked their professions by coming out publicly and saying, the story of the 9/11 Commission is a joke. They got NIST to issue a report. And I supported NIST when I was in Congress. NIST is the National Institute for Standards and Technology. But NIST and other agencies will do whatever the government wants. I'll give you 2 stories. And this is one that every one of your viewers needs to watch. It's a film produced by firefighters. It's called Calling Out Bravo 7. They can get it for free. If they contact you or me, I'll send it to them. I've sent out thousands of copies. They can go online for Firefighters for Truth. In that film, toward the end, they analyze the buildings, just as you point out. And they're better at this than me. But in the end, they give the case of the battalion fire chief of New York, who was in tip-top physical condition, Oriole Palmer, a father of 3 kids, normal, hardworking firefighter. He was a very proud man. He responded on the first due company into the World Trade Center tower. Took his crew with the air pack on their backs, their full gear, carrying hose, 40 pounds of equipment. They got in an elevator of one of the towers. Contrary to what the 9/11 Commission would have you believe, they went up 40 floors. They get off at the 40th floor, and you can hear Oriole Palmer's words. When you watch the film, you'll hear him say, we're on the 40th floor, and it's okay. We're going up. They start going up in the stair tower, the 45th floor, the 50th floor. And you hear Oriole say, we're on the 50th floor. It's okay. We're going up. 60th floor, 65th floor, in the stair tower. It's okay. We're going up. Battalion Chief Oriole Palmer reaches the 78th floor, the floor where the planes hit. And he comes out of the stair tower with his crew. And he said, we're here. We're on the floor of impact. We've got 2 fires, and we can handle them. That's not me saying that. That's not some fake Hollywood star saying that. That's Battalion Chief Oreo Palmer in the middle of the worst disaster in America, standing on outside the stair tower in the building on the 78th floor where the plane hit, saying in his own professional judgment, we can handle this. And the building collapses. It's a massive lie. It's a massive lie and an arrogant slap in the face of every firefighter and every person that died at 9/11. There's none of that in the 9/11 Commission report. Not one piece of that. Second, the 9/11 Commission wouldn't allow me to testify before the commission. Now, as a firefighter all my life, a fire chief, a state fire instructor, I spent 18 years working for an insurance company, and I was the vice chairman of both Armed Services and Homeland Security. You would think they would say, Congressman Weldon, would you please testify? They didn't want me to testify because I had been at the Trade Center Tower in 93, and I was there in 01 as the guest of the fire department of New York at Ground Zero. When the report was finally issued for members, I went over to the Cannon building when the commission was giving it out. I stood up to be the first questioner. And I said to Lee Hamilton and Tom Kane, both good men, I don't fault them for this. This is not them. It's the people that did the staff work, that did the cover-up. And I said, Lee and Tom, you know my background. You know my commitment to firefighters. You know I was up there in 93 and 01. Why wouldn't you call me to testify? And Lee Hamilton said, well, you know, Curt, we had a lot of people that wanted to testify. I said, really? The staffers did not want me to testify. The same way they didn't want Tony Shaffer to publish his book after they had tried to ruin his life. And Tony had met Zelikow as he brought 9/11 staffers through Kabul, asking if any military had encountered anything to do with the attack at 9/11. Tony Shaffer volunteered to meet with him. They exchanged business cards in Kabul. And Zelikow said to Tony, we need to meet when you get back to America. When Tony returned to the States, after serving as a spy, Bronze Star recipient in Afghanistan, his offices were locked. All his files were secured. Tony's security clearances were removed. And they went after him. They made up some ridiculous, stupid charges. I did a 1-hour special order. Anybody in America can Google on the House of Representatives website, and you can pull up the special order I did, or I'll give it to you online. 1 hour. And I said, this is the biggest scandal in the history of America. Defense Intelligence Agency should be tried for criminal activity against Tony Shaffer because he was telling the truth.
The U.S. dollar is under siege, and Biden's policies have caused irreparable damage, slashing its buying power by up to 30%. Inflation is down, but everything is still expensive. Meanwhile, President Trump is fighting to restore America's economic strength and protect the petrodollar. History tells us the dollar's value has plummeted while gold and silver have soared. If you're betting on the future, 10 or 20 years from now, gold and silver are the clear winner. Don't let your wealth be eroded. Colonial Metals Group's experts can help guide you, whether you're starting fresh or managing an existing IRA or your family's fortune. Now, their professionalism can help you understand why gold and silver are so powerful. I want you to act now by giving them a call at 800-807-2143 for a special offer. Get a free safe and up to $7,500 in free silver. But best of all, I want you to get peace of mind. Go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Stephen-Gardner or snap the QR code in the bottom left-hand corner. You guys, I believe in gold and silver. You should have some in your portfolio.
Tony then went to work in the reserves. And a few years later decided to write his book called Dark Heart. So as his protocol when you're a spy, you have to ask your superiors to approve your book. So he went to his commanding officer and he said, I want to write my memoir. Will you review it for me and make sure it's okay? He said, sure. They reviewed Tony's book. He said, okay, publish it, Tony. Tony's publisher starts publishing it. And then the deep state finds out. Those who don't want the truth out. they issue a cease and desist order to the publisher. Stop publishing the book. It's too late. The book's already in production. So our government, now listen carefully, people, our government used taxpayer money, and they bought all 10,000 copies of the first edition of Tony Shaffer's book to destroy them. Then they said to Tony, you can print a redacted version. And he did. So I had Tony on a podcast last October, on the anniversary, a month after the attack last year. I said, Tony, you have the original book, right? Yeah, here it is, Congressman. He held it up. You have the redacted book. Yeah, here it is. So, Tony, what was the difference? What were they so concerned about? What state secrets were you giving away that were the big issues they didn't want in the book that you were publishing? What was the big state secret? Or can't you talk about it? He said, Congressman, all they wanted out of my book was the fact that I had briefed Zelikow. They did not want Zelikow's name in Tony's book. They did not want the people to know that Tony Shaffer, a member of the Able Danger team, had briefed Zelikow and the 9/11 staff, and so did Scott Philpott in the U.S., before they published the report. When Scott Philpott went to Dieter Snell said, it's too late, we're about ready to publish. They didn't care about the severity of the story. They didn't care that the information that they had, now listen carefully, Louis Freeh, former FBI director, not Curt Weldon, not Able Danger, Louis Freeh, who were not bad in the New York Times. When the 9/11 report came out, Louis Freeh said it's an incomplete investigation because they did not put anything in there about the information that Congressman Weldon has now made available to the public. He also went on Good Morning America. I can provide both of those for anyone that wants them. And Louis Freeh said, if the FBI would have had the information that the Able Danger team tried to transfer, we may well have been able to have prevented 9/11 from ever happening. It's a massive, massive cover-up. Now, you asked about the buildings. I don't want to project myself as an engineer or an architect because I'm not. And one of the things I've said on every show I've done, what I tell you, I'll take a polygraph on. So when I don't know something, I'll tell you I cannot, as a builder or engineer, tell you the details of the building. I can tell you this. We have firefighters who heard explosions in the buildings. We have people coming out of the buildings who heard explosions. We know that there were no solid investigation of the fire after the fact, as is required by fire codes in every city in America. That was not done. But I'll tell you something else. They're going to hang their hat on NIST. Oh, we have the NIST report. The NIST report did their extensive study. Now, I'm not here to trash NIST because there are good people at NIST. But I know the pressure NIST was under when they did the report. And let me just say this about NIST. If you go on NIST website today, it boasts about all the good things they do for America, how our public transit systems are safer because of NIST standards, how America is safer because of NIST standards and technology. And that's true. I agree with all that. So in my first term in office, I'm assigned to the Longworth building, a 7-story building above ground. I'm on the second floor, 2 doors from Jim Wright's office, the speaker. It's 7 o'clock at night. I'm working late, and I smell smoke. I go out to the hallway after telling my staffer, John, to call the fire in. I look up, and the speaker's office is on fire. I go up to the door and kick the door open and crawl in to make sure the staff was out of the office suite. As I crawled around the offices in the corner suite for the speaker, Jim Wright, I could see that the kitchen was fully involved. There were no staffers trapped in there. No one was on the floor. It looked like everyone had gotten out. So I said to my staffer, give me the portable extinguishers. 3 of the 5 he brought weren't charged. The hose in the hose station wasn't there. There was nothing I could do to control the fire. So I came back out to the hallway. When I came back out to the hallway, People are running, members of Congress and staffers work late at night. Even though it was 7 o'clock at night, there were dozens and dozens of people screaming coming down the stairs. What do we do? Where do we go? As the Capitol Hill police were running through the building yelling, fire, get out. Now this again is a 7-story building above ground, housing members of Congress, constituents who are blind, who are handicapped, children, who are invalids. That building was in violation of every code in every city in America. So I went on national TV that night, and this is all public information, all sooty and dirty from the fire, because the fire chief, who's my good friend today, Ray Alford, arrived. And I said, Chief, you got a working fire on the second floor, but I'm sure you've been allowed to pre-plan these buildings. He said, no, Congressman, we've never been allowed inside these buildings. So that night on national TV, I said, these buildings are fire traps. So here I am, a freshman member of Congress, former fire chief, telling the American people, not just my building, all 6 office buildings, where all 535 members of Congress were working, were fire traps, high-rise fire traps. Where was NIST? NIST is the National Institute for Standards and Technology. Were they letting their bosses work in buildings that were fire traps? Is that the NIST record? Is that their reputation? Well, let me tell you, when NIST comes in to tell me that they wrote the standard, I'm going to hold them accountable because I fought that fire. Yeah. That night, I got a call in my house, my little apartment in Washington, from Jim Wright's chief of staff. He said, Mr. Congressman Weldon, the speaker wanted me to call me and thank you, call you and thank you for what you did. I said, look, that's no problem. I did what anybody would do to make sure your staff was out. He said, but you're going to be inundated with the media tomorrow. I'm a freshman Republican. The speaker is the top Democrat. He didn't even know who I was. He said, tomorrow, are you going to blame the speaker? I said, no, I'm not going to blame the speaker. That's not my game. But I want this fixed. That building is a fire trap. And if that's occurring in every building, they're all fire traps. He said, whatever you want, Mr. Chairman, the speaker will respond. The next day, I got up and offered a privilege resolution. Privilege resolution takes precedence over all other legislation. It doesn't go through the Rules Committee. I said, Mr. Speaker, I have a privilege resolution at the desk. He said, I recognize the gentleman, and I want to thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania for what he did in responding to my office last night. He said, I recognize the gentleman for whatever time he wants, and I want to tell the gentleman I support what he wants, and I will appoint a 4-member commission to make recommendations to retrofit every building on Capitol Hill. I was one of the 4 people the speaker appointed to that commission. Where was NIST? Where was NIST when the leaders of our country were working in buildings that were fire traps? They were nowhere around. NIST felt the pressure to come up with a report that was a part of the game plan that Clinton, Bush, White Houses wanted to say that 9/11 was not what it was. And for this to come in today is a joke. The University of Alaska has one of the best engineering departments in the country. I'm not an engineer like they are. They are. They did a full analysis of the NIST report. And they said it's hogwash. They challenged the findings, they challenged the report, and they challenged the assumptions. What I want the president to do is I want him to appoint a new commission. I want to bring in artificial intelligence. I want them to do simulation. I want to prove that these people lied to the American people. I am not going to let this stand, that the largest life in American history on our soil, where 343 firefighters were basically vaporized, where 2,977 innocent souls were lost, goes down the record book as something that we couldn't control. That's not going to happen.
Yes. Okay. Wow. This is why we got to get the truth out. Let me go back to one thing. I appreciate everything you just shared. So insightful. So just to remind my audience, the first plane hits perfectly at 8:46 a.m. The second plane hits at 9:03, but then 56 minutes later, every floor of a steel frame skyscraper designed to easily withstand an airplane. They're telling us a fireball went down the elevator, evaporated immediately, but left enough damage that now, floor by floor, it looks like explosions collapsing. Those buildings suddenly fall into their own footprint. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, again, and you know, what we have to be careful of here, the people who have the most to lose in this whole scenario of the analysis are the deep state, because they're going to get caught lying. So they're spinning it like wild. And that's why they've been calling the architects truthers and conspiracy theorists. They're the ones that make the conspiracies up. They have whole courses for intelligence agents on how to do conspiracies. I'm not stupid. I used to oversee the Defense Committee. And look, we might need that in foreign countries, but we don't need conspiracy theories developed by our own intelligence agency for the American people. I can tell you this. There's never been a high-rise building in the world that's come down from a plane hitting it or from a fire. Never. Not one. Remember the Sands fire out in Las Vegas where the whole high-rise, that building didn't come down. The building stood. It's being used today. High-rise buildings don't come down from fires. And there's never been a plane hit a building where the building came down. Those buildings were designed to withstand the hit of a Boeing airplane, a plane of that size. So all of this is factual information that all of the architects and engineers that I've talked to fully understand, which is why they're so outraged. This cannot be allowed to stand. I don't want to have some emotional partisan approach to this. I don't want this to be a Democrat or Republican initiative because the leaders in both parties were involved with this. I'm a Republican. The Bush administration took me out of office when they were in 3 weeks before my election, even though the father gave that speech about me, which you can show to your viewers. The Clinton administration was involved before. They don't want. Sandy Berger stole documents out of the archives 2 weeks before he was to testify before the 9/11 Commission. You might remember the story. Sandy Berger went to the National Archives and said, I want to see some documents from when I was the security advisor to Clinton. They let him on the top floor of the archives. I went there in 2006 before I was taken out of office to see what we think he stole. It was all pre-9/11 information. So Sandy Berger, the national security leader for President Clinton, before he's to testify before the commission, goes to the archives and stuffs documents in his underwear and his socks. You remember the story?
Yes.
He doesn't realize he's on tape. So he leaves the archives. He gets a call from the inspector general. Mr. Berger, did you take anything while you were in the archives? Well, no, I didn't take anything. That's a felony. He lied to a federal agent about stealing very sensitive classified documents. And the inspector general said, you better hire an attorney. So Sandy Berger hires a Clinton crony attorney. And they cut a plea bargain. The plea bargain? He pled guilty to 11 felonies. Lying to a federal agent, stealing 5 documents, stealing 5 classified, sensitive, pre-9/11 documents, destroying 5 sensitive pre-9/11 documents. What's his response? No jail time. 1 year. He pleads to a misdemeanor. Loses security clearance for 1 year. This is the biggest outrage in the history of our country. Sandy Berger was a traitor. Now, I said that while he was alive. That's why he spent the bulk of his last years campaigning with his chief of staff against me in that year where they took me out. Sandy Berger's, he assigned his person from his staff of his company to come up and run my opponent's campaign. He knew. I got into the archives. I said to my staff, I want to get down there and see what we think he stole because we don't have the documents he stole. It was all pre-9/11 intelligence. It was the Millennium After Action report done by John Ashcroft. And there was other information that they didn't want the 9/11 Commission to have to include in the report. All of this. Now, people will say, well, why are you waiting all this time? Well, I'll tell you why I waited. Nobody else had done to their family what I had done to my family. I couldn't trust the deep state. Under Clinton, under Bush, certainly not under Obama. Certainly, Obama, look, he might be a nice guy. He can talk the talk and shoot the hoops. He had no control over the government. And Biden is a friend of mine. When my son died, he drove 3 hours as vice president to stand in line at my son's funeral. My son was Ashley's classmate in high school. I always got along with Joe. Joe traveled with me, but Joe wasn't in charge. And Trump, the first time he was elected, and I told his people this, the intelligence community is going to undermine him. They took out General Flynn. They ruined General Flynn's life. They ruined his family. So Trump was like a baby in the woods for 4 years. This time, Trump came in with a different understanding. He knows what he's facing. And I know what he's facing. And I put everything down in writing. I have multiple copies. I have the largest archives in Congress history. And we did a 100-hour digitized, annotated, indexed oral history that no one's ever seen. Interviews with members of Congress from both parties, with agency leaders and agency people that have told the stories that one day I'll release in the appropriate circumstances. The people I work with are all the most credible leaders in Congress. Former federal judges, former head of the FBI, former deputy director of the FBI, former military generals and officers. They all know the story. They won't come out and talk, and I understand that. Because when you come out and talk, you're the bad guy. Look, I'm at the point in my life where I've got to tell the story. I owe this to Ray Downey. I owe this to Ray Downey's family. You know Ray Downey's 2 sons today are firefighters in New York. Ray Downey's son has his father's job. He's the chief of all rescue for New York City Fire Department. I owe it to them for their dad. He was a Marine. I owe it to Battalion Chief Oriole Palmer's family. I owe it to all those firefighters. And I don't care if some loose jerk like Chuck Schumer, and he's a loose jerk, who didn't do his job with 9/11, runs around saying it's outrageous that a senator would want to reopen 9/11. You wait till it's over, Chuck Schumer. You'll be the biggest fool in America for the cover-up that you helped make occur as a Democrat. And it was both parties. And if I sound like I'm emotional, I am. To me, this is very personal, as you can tell. I don't want any money out of this. And as I told Tucker Carlson, I'm still paying the mortgage on my house. So I don't have any secret bank accounts. I don't have 5 homes. I don't have the Clinton Endowment Trust. I don't have Obama's wealth. The American people need to take back the control of the country. And again, there are good people in intelligence. I keep having to say that. I have good friends in intelligence. I don't want to hurt the intelligence community because they are good, hardworking, dedicated. They've done nothing in using the intelligence except to make money for themselves and build up big bank accounts, not worrying about the country, worrying about their own private wealth. And this 9/11 story is going to be the one that changes that. My real goal now is to help the firefighters. I have a 7-part strategy. It's all through NGOs that they run. And if it's the last thing I'll do that. The 9/11 Commission is the last part of that strategy.
Okay. I'm just privileged to be even just a very small part of helping get the truth out. Let me go back to one thing in our just final minutes together. Let me set this scenario up. So a plane hits, supposedly instead of igniting and all of the jet fuel burning off quickly and going up, it goes down the shaft of the building. It also does the exact same thing perfectly on the second building. They fall 29 minutes apart, but then 5 hours later, building 7, that is not hit by an airplane, it suddenly falls perfectly floor by floor like a demolition into its own footprint. And now you can look this up. 20 minutes before that building goes down, the BBC announces building 7 has collapsed. And then they go, oh, never mind. We don't know that. How on earth does building 7 collapse? I think that is the first place to prove a lot of this.
I agree with you. And that's why, from the building standpoint, everyone should watch for free, there's no charge, the film Calling Out Bravo 7. It was produced not by Hollywood, because Hollywood would never take a film like this. They don't have the guts. Hollywood's a bunch of phonies. They sit in their coffee shops and their boutiques They don't have the guts to take on the truth. Calling out Bravo 7 was done by firefighters. And when you watch that film, they focus on Building 7. And you'll see it from multiple angles. The building comes straight down. No attack by any planes. And remember, no high-rise building has ever come down by fire. This building, even Donald Trump, there's a recording of him that I have a copy of, and you can get a copy of it, on 9/11. He's interviewed by a TV station in New York as they talk about Building 7. And he said, oh, as a builder, I can tell you that building wasn't exploded. That building, that was controlled demolition. Even Donald Trump understood back then. The problem is they've been able to dumb down the American people and have us get so wrapped up in remembering the dead that we forget that we should never allow them to get away with making them the dead. Look, I want to help every firefighter victim that dies. And I do that all the time, but that's not the total focus. They never should have died. And then on top of it, I find out that bin Laden's not in Afghanistan, and we send thousands of kids over to fight in Afghanistan to find bin Laden when our government knows he's in Baluchistan, Iran. And I have that documented, and I'll take a polygraph on that. So 2,500 more kids die in Afghanistan, and thousands more come back injured and blind and burned because people lied to us. That's not America. It's not what our country's about. And I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. You know, you can protest in the streets all you want, but you're not going to do this anymore. And people say, well, why are you doing this? Well, look, I'll give you an example that's more recent. People say, why do firefighters wait so long? Firefighters don't go out and picket in the street. If they get hurt by something that's been wronged by some politician, they simply suck it up and take it. Because that's the way they are. They're loyal, patriotic Americans. And there have been many times when they've been abused. Look at what happened in L.A. In January, they had all the wildland fires in L.A. It was a nightmare. People were all over the place, hurt. And the firefighters did the best job they could. They had no water supply. They were understaffed, under-equipped. So the media stuck a microphone in the fire chief's face. And they said, Chief, and by the way, I had just given the keynote speech to the California fire chiefs a year earlier. They're all my friends. They said, Chief, did this happen because you were shortchanged? The rumors are that your budget was cut by 18 or 20%. And the fire chief did what firefighters don't always do. She told the truth. She said, yes, our resources were cut severely, and we weren't able to handle the situation. What did the mayor do? The mayor fired the female fire chief. Where was the outrage? Where was the protest in the streets that the fire chief got fired because she simply told the truth? It wasn't her fault. And that's what happens. So those firefighters that died at 9/11, yeah, we have all these memorials, and we're gonna have homes for the families, and that's all great. But they should never have died in the first place. And what are you doing about that? What are you doing to prevent the next 9/11 or the next war or the next attack? Because if you're not doing that, then helping those that are still alive from the dead isn't solving the problem. There's going to be more families that go through that. It's time for America to focus on preventing these losses of lives. And if it's the last thing I'll do, as I've said before, for firefighters and their military, I'm going to make sure they know the truth. The truth has not been told till now. 1,000% it's not been told. And they will all be ashamed of themselves. But they made their money. Check their bank accounts. They're all wealthy. They're all wealthy. They've all made out very well. And America, well, we're going to establish a new charity. We're going to talk about these families and we all know they're great people. But what about their loved ones that are gone? That doesn't bring them back. You got to stop it before it occurs. And you can't stop it until you know what happened the last time. And if you're not willing to tell the truth, you'll never be able to correct it the next time. There are people that know in our country what happened. They're there. And they're right now running around saying, what can we do to shut Weldon up? What can we do to change the narrative? What can we do to make these engineers look like crazies? What can we do to stop the lawyers? What can we do to stop the families? What can we do to have the families blame somebody else other than us? That's what they're all doing. I know they're listening, and that's fine. But I'm not stupid, and neither are the American people. Thank you for doing a great job for the country.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. You're passionate. You're brave. You know this. You've got this collection. I can't wait for you and Tucker Carlson and others just to completely crack this thing wide open. I want to be a part of it the best that I can. But I want to just thank you so much for all that you've done, taking time to come out. I know I'm just, a little guy, but when Colonel Schaefer said, I would like for you to speak with Congressman Curt Weldon, I was like, please, yes, I would love the opportunity to tell his story. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I've got a couple of things I want to say off the air, but thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to put some direct links down below. We'll fill in some details here, but thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Remember, have them watch Calling Out Bravo 7. They all want to watch that. It's free. Thank you.
Thank you.